I was dead in my transgressions, wandering in sin. I went searching for redemption down a road that had no end. I was walking through the fire. I was living on the run with my flesh lost in desire. I was drowning in the flood. But God, rich in mercy, you came to save me. Now I'm alive. But God, strong and mighty, you reached down for me so I could rise. Now I'm alive. I am far from being perfect. There are things that I regret. On this battlefield I struggle with the lies that I have lived. I have fallen short of glory. I can't make it on my own. If you kept record of my past, I'd be sinking like a stone. But God, rich in mercy, you came to save me. Now I'm alive. But God, strong and mighty, you reached down for me so I could rise. And now I'm breathing in, I'm breathing out. I was in the grave, but God, you called me out. Now I'm breathing in, I'm breathing out. I was in the grave, but God, you called me out. But God, rich in mercy, you came to save me. Now I'm alive. My God, strong and mighty, you reached down for me so I could rise. And now I'm breathing in, I'm breathing out. I was in the grave, but God, you called me out. Now I'm breathing in, I'm breathing out. I was in the grave, but God, you called me out. Now I'm alive. How lovely is your dwelling place, O Lord Almighty. My soul doth long and even faints for you. Hear my soul is satisfied within your presence. I sing beneath the shadow of your wings. Better is one day in your courts, better is one day in your house, better is one day in your courts than thousands elsewhere. Better is one day in your courts, better is one day in your house, better is one day in your courts than thousands elsewhere, than thousands elsewhere. How lovely is your dwelling place, O Lord Almighty. My soul does shadow of your wings. Better is one day in your courts. Better is one day in your house. Better is one day in your courts than thousands elsewhere. Better is one day in your courts. Better is one day in your house. Better is one day in your courts than thousands elsewhere. My heart and flesh cry out for you, the living God. Your spirit's water to my soul. I've tasted and I've seen. Come once again to me. I will draw near to you. I will draw near to you. Better is one day in your courts. Better is one day in your house. Better is one day in your courts than thousands elsewhere. Better is one day in your courts. Better is one day in your house. Better is one day in your courts than thousands elsewhere. Better is one day in your courts. Better is one day in your house. Better is one day in your courts than thousands elsewhere.
Better is one day in your courts. Better is one day in your house. Better is one day in your courts.
Than thousands elsewhere. Better is one day in your courts. Better is one day in your house. Better is one day in your courts than thousands elsewhere. Than a thousand than a thousand elsewhere. A thousand elsewhere. Better is one day in your courts. Better is one day in your house. Better is one day in your courts than thousands elsewhere. Better is one day in your courts. Better is one day in your house. Better is one day in your courts than thousands elsewhere. Thousands elsewhere. I think most of us were here this morning, and just a message just about prayer and what it is, and it's not just for some of us, and it's but it's for all of us. And Joyce said some things this morning, and I thought, wow, that's me. There's times I've kind of dismissed it and said, God's sovereign. He's got this big stuff. I don't. But he's called us all to intimate relationship. I'm caught up in your presence. I just want to sit here at your feet. I'm caught up in this holy moment. I never want to leave. Oh, I'm not here for blessings. Jesus, you don't owe me anything more than anything that you can do. I just want you. I'm sorry. When I've just gone through the motions, I'm sorry. When I just sang another song, take me back to where we started. I open up my heart to you. I'm sorry. When I've come with my agenda, I'm sorry. When I forgot that you're enough, take me back to where we started. I open up my heart to you. I'm caught up in your presence. I just wanna sit here at your feet. I'm caught up in this holy moment. I never want to leave. Oh, I'm not here for blessings. Jesus, you don't owe me anything more than anything that you can do. I just want you. I just want you and nothing else. Nothing else. Nothing else will do. I just want you and nothing else. Nothing else. Nothing else will do. I just want you and nothing else. Nothing else. Nothing else will do. I just want you and nothing else. Nothing else. Nothing else will do. I'm caught up in your presence. I just wanna sit here at your feet. I'm caught up in this holy moment. I never want to leave. I'm not here for blessings. Jesus, you don't owe me anything more than anything that you can do. I just want you. Oh, more than anything that you can do. I just want you.
Good evening. I always forget how to put this thing on, so give me a second if it starts moving. Real quick. Was that me? I just touched the... We good? Okay. So real quick, I want you to turn to your neighbor and say, this might take a while. And I'm not talking about the message tonight, I hope. This is part 3 of a 4-part series, and one of the things that I'm not a big fan of doing series because I feel like I have to stay in a structure. And the first one, as a little recap, was the key to change is more of the same. Talking about the idea of being obedient in the right things consistently. And then the next one was about finding your rhythm. So once you find the right things, you got to persevere in them. And then looking at what we've been talking about on Sundays, being rooted, extravagant worship, intercessory prayer, like these are the things that we have to find rhythm in, as we're growing in them. And so now we're here, and I love that you kind of touched on this morning. I got a little giddy back there when you started it, but the idea that when God doesn't work on our timetables, when we're expected, like right now, there's certain things we've been praying about, and we've been discouraged because it hasn't happened when we thought it was supposed to. And there's other things we're excited about because we're starting to see what the Lord is doing, and we're excited, but what happens when that goes longer than what we think it's supposed to? It's easy to get discouraged. And so once you find the right things and you get in this rhythm of consistency with your intimate walk with the Lord, it's that last song was perfect. It might take a while, and we just have to enjoy His presence. So that's where we're at today. So I'm going to start off by saying the faith to step out is worthless without the faith to stick it out. That first step is important, but if you're not willing to do every other step after that with the Lord, that first step, it's just a step. Matthew 11:28 through 30 out of the Message. I read this last time, but it says, "Are you tired, worn out, burned out on religion? Come to me, get away with me, and you'll recover your life. I'll show you how to take a real rest. Walk with me and work with me. Watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me, and you'll learn to live freely and lightly." So just the idea of waiting, just that word wait. It's not a phrase we enjoy. It's not an idea that we like to think about. But that's exactly what we're going to talk about tonight. It's exactly what I think the Lord wants us to do, is to stick it out in our relationship with Him. We know that at the starting line of anything that God is working in you and working through you, but after it takes a little bit of time, maybe we doubt or we question. So this might take a while. I'm going to say that a lot tonight. This might take a while. Because it might. Whatever it is you're praying for, whatever it is that you're hoping for, whatever this church is hoping for, it might take a while. But the faith to step out is worthless without the faith to stick it out. In John 15:1 through 17, I'm going to read out of the NIV, it says, "I am the true vine, and my Father is the gardener. He cuts off every branch in me that bears no fruit, while every branch that does bear fruit he prunes so that it will be even more fruitful. You are already clean because of the word I have spoken to you. Remain in me, as I also remain in you. No branch can bear fruit by itself. It must remain in the vine. Neither can you bear fruit unless you remain in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. If you do not remain in me, you are like a branch that is thrown away and withers. Such branches are picked up, thrown into the fire, and burned. If you remain in me and my words remain in you, ask whatever you wish, and it will be done for you. This is to my Father's glory that you bear much fruit, showing yourselves to be my disciples. As the Father has loved me, so have I loved you. Now remain in my love. If you keep my commands, you will remain in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commands and remain in his love. I have told you this so that my joy may be in you and that your joy may be complete. My command is this: love each other as I have loved you. For greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. You are my friends if you do what I command. I no longer call you servants, because a servant does not know his master's business. Instead, I have called you friends, for everything that I learned from my Father I have made known to you. You did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you so that you might go and bear fruit, fruit that will last. And so whatever you ask in my name, the Father will give you. This is my command, love each other. That's been kind of like the key set of scriptures here from John 15, 1 through 17 for this whole series so far. So we know that fruitfulness and faithfulness, they're inseparable, right? The relationship between faithfulness and producing fruit is definitely one of a very close friend. You can't produce fruit if you're not faithful, if you're not remaining in the vine, right? Producing fruit and faithfulness goes together. Now, there are a lot of quiet heroes out there being consistently faithful, quietly reaping and sowing kingdom things into kingdom people that no one but God will ever know the name of. And that's okay. If you feel like that right now, that's okay. Jesus speaks at length about how we bear fruit if we remain in him. However, while we crave real-time results, we enjoy microwave fast-cooked dinners and drive-through-like service with things, but God is into long-lasting fruit. It's like you said, we get frustrated when you got 30 seconds left on the microwave. We're praying about things and we got 30 seconds left in the microwave and we get irritated and walk away. But if we remain faithful, we'll eventually be fruitful, right? We understand the concept and the principle, but too often we function like we'd like it to be the other way around. That if we're fruitful, then we'll remain faithful. When we see results, we'll stay with it. It's hard to stay with something that you're not seeing results. Now, I like to pick on myself. Actually, I don't. I loathe it. But every time I'm up here, I share a little bit more that kind of is awkward and embarrassing. Last time, my wife reminded me that I'm not going to the gym like I said I was. And I'm not seeing any results. So now I got a gym membership since last time I spoke. I'm going 5 times a week. And I'm not seeing any results except for my shirts are they're too tight now. They don't fit. I've not lost any weight on the scales. I feel a little bit better, but I'm tired all the time. And if I let that discourage me because I don't see the fruit that I'm looking for, I'll stop. And all I'll have is a gym membership that I'm paying for. But if I stick it out, everything I'm reading and everybody who talks to me says it takes 4 to 6 months to see long-lasting results. I've been doing it maybe a month now at best. I need to stick it out because fruitfulness comes from faithfulness, not the other way around. I have to watch her because I never know what she's going to say. Okay. We can't live life like if we're fruitful, then we'll remain faithful. Because we know that it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work like a fast food transaction. But like I said, if we're honest with ourselves, when the fruit seems to take some time or more time than we think it ought to, we struggle with that. At least I do. I hope I'm not the only one. But we have no right to be disappointed by the fruit that wasn't born from the seed that we didn't sow. When we give up too early, we can't be disappointed by that because there's stuff the Lord wants us to do. Some gardening, spiritual gardening that He wants to take place. And if we walk away from that too soon, we have no right to be disappointed by the fruit that we haven't sowed. Like I said, I can attest to that. Several times over. I won't waste your time talking about that. But I know I get frustrated about things, and the Lord's like, but I thought I told you. Yeah, but if if you'd kept doing this, maybe we'd be here now instead of back here at square one again. So I can tell you the same thing I told you a month ago or a year ago or whatever. Can we all agree there are very few things in life that is more frustrating than the feeling of being unfruitful? Anybody ever felt unfruitful? Does that feel good? It's one thing when we are fruitful in the wrong things, or that you haven't really been sowing any seed at all. Those things make sense to us. Oh, I see how I get here in hindsight. Or I haven't done anything, so I expect this to happen. But what happens when we sow the right seeds and we still don't see any fruit? We want to remain and be fruitful, but at times we get frustrated. Say it with me. This may take a while. Say it back. That's important. The idea of God's timetable. You know, I've often thought about this. How cool would it be if you could just go to God's desk and look at his calendar, or look at his phone notes, or look at his schedule, right? How cool would that be? So that I would know, like, what his plans were for certain things. You know, when will this happen in my life? Or how long do I have to wait for this? Is this thing even going to come about? Some of our greatest questions, it's like we're waiting on God's timetable. You know, is so-and-so, is this loved one that I love so much, are they ever going to give their life to the Lord? You know, how many times do I have to say the salvation message to them? How many times do I got to pray for them? They're being rude to me. They don't want to hear this. Now, if we're being honest, I don't really think God has a calendar. You know, the Bible tells us he's not within time the same way that we are, but just as an idea, it would be awesome if we could just look and just read his mind for a second. The problem, though, is, like I just said, God is outside of time, and we are restrained by time itself. We look at the days and the hours, and we think, man, this has to happen faster. This has to be produced sooner. We've been doing all these outreaches, and no one's coming in from the outside. I've been ministering to the same family member for a long time, and they're still miserable, old, grumpy people. I wasn't sure where I was going to go with that either. But you know, we get frustrated when we don't see the fruit that we're hoping for. In John 8:57 and 58, it says, "You aren't even 50 years old yet. You have seen and talked with Abraham. I tell you the truth, I am before Abraham was born." Like, it's another proof that when Jesus says, "I am," right? He is defining just that he is. Now, we can read that and we can know that, but sometimes it's hard for us to grasp that. It's a pretty deep concept, and it has huge implications upon our lives because unlike God, we are shackled to the realm of time. It's going to make sense at the end, I promise. I say that every time, though. 2 Peter 3:8 says, "Don't imagine, dear friends, that God's timetable is the same as ours. As the Psalm says, for with the Lord, one day is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is like one day." So the difference between God's unrestrained nature to time and what seems like sometimes our human slavery to time definitely results in some substantial differences while we're hoping. I don't think God's worrying about being late or rushing about being on time, but we do. And we will never understand God's timing this side of heaven. Like I said, I don't know what is you're praying for. I said this last time. I know what we're praying for in some regard. But there are things that I've been praying for years that I'm like, man, why aren't they here yet? I've been, I'm faithful in this area. Why isn't it here yet? There's some generic examples. I don't know if you'll fit in any of these, but What is the desperate job seeker to do when the unemployment doesn't come through? How does the married couple face another childless year when everyone around them has caught the pregnancy bug? How much longer does the single man or woman have to wait to find a good spouse? Will science or doctors ever find the cures for the illnesses that are plaguing us as human beings? Is my loved one ever going to come to Jesus? Or here's one. I keep doing all these things for relaxation, but I'm still stressed. When am I ever going to have a non-stress life? The culture that we live in is very anthropocentric. That's just a big word to say that we think about ourselves. It's the ethical belief that humans alone possess intrinsic value belonging naturally or essentially. Basically that we live in a culture that's human-centered. We think about it from a human point of view, looking at it from human needs and desires. And we get it wrong when we live as though our lives are completely about us and solely seek for our own glory. I love that last song that we did, because there's times when we're praying about certain things, and there could be good things with good intentions, but we're focusing on it from our perspective and our point of view. And we're like, God, do this so that you can get the glory, but we're doing it out of selfish intentions, even if we don't realize it. And we're not just spending time at his feet, enjoying his presence. We also get it wrong when we stubbornly want what we want, when we want, how we want. There's a lot of more wants there that I'm not going to read. I was thinking of the little girl from Willy Wonka, I want it now. Because we're stubborn and we want it our way, because we're anthropocentric, human-centered, about us. Everything in our environment points to instant gratification. Instant oatmeal, immediate answers on Google. I got a 5G phone and I get mad when I have to wait. I don't even know if 5G is good or not, but I know that's faster than the one I used to have. And if I have to wait for it to load, more times than not, I will restart the whole thing and start over because it's not fast enough. We like drive-thrus, microwave sped meals, 24-hour service. We are easily irritated when we have to wait. I'm sure we all remember dial-up internet. Man, I get frustrated about my phone right now, but I remember dial-up internet. I had to wait forever, and it was annoying. We just sat in front of my computer waiting and waiting and waiting and listening to that annoying little beeping dial-up sound. Unlike most things in life that we're used to, though, God is not about instant gratification. We know in our knower, I stole that, we know in our knower that God is not inactive or silent while we wait on him, but we still get frustrated. We still get distracted with what we're looking at and get discouraged, even though we know that during seasons of waiting, he continues to work in us and through us and all around us. While waiting might seem like a waste of time, sometimes to us, it's just a huge waste of time. God designed that waiting period to be productive. Goes back to the first parts. Finding your rhythm. The key to change is more of the same. Being consistent in the right things. Because God designed the waiting time to be productive. The exercise of waiting is shaping and sharpening. Through it, God instills humility, patience, and peace in our hearts and our minds. Perhaps in John 15, Jesus wanted us to grasp that we will bear the right fruit when we stay connected to him, but this process may force us to embrace a phrase that most of us don't like. This may take a while. I'm going to keep saying that most of the evening, because it might take a while. We will bear the right fruit when we remain. It might take a while. It's been said that we do not know what the future holds, but we believe in a God who holds our future. Since God is beyond time, he fully abides in the past, but also fully abides in the present and in the future. In the same way that we view our surroundings at this precise moment, God just as clearly sees every day in everyone's life throughout all of history. We just have a little snippet that we see. Genesis 1:22 says, God blessed them and said, "Be fruitful and increase in number, and fill the water in the seas, and let the birds increase on the air." God blesses Adam and Eve and says, "Be fruitful and increase." From the beginning, increase has been a mark of God's blessing. It's natural for us to equate success to our ability to increase something. If we're not seeing results, we're not seeing the increase, we're not seeing it, we feel like we're not successful. We feel like we're failing. In John 15:2, it says that he cuts off every branch in me that bears no fruit, while every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes so that it will be even more fruitful. It's like you're snipped if you do or you're snipped if you don't, right? In life, now if this hits home with somebody, I'm sorry, take it up with the big guy, but in life we are hoarders of physical or emotional, or whatever. We are hoarders. We like to collect things. That's what we do. We want more, we pile it on, and when life gets bogged down with more and more and more, we find ourselves stuck in a repeat of gathering more and more and more, and we find less joy. We're just looking for things, more things, even good things, even ministry things. We get caught up in the act of, and we lose the joy of doing it. As we live life continually abiding in him until we see the fruition of our fruit, we begin to shed what doesn't really matter and discover the things that really do. In our remaining, God is cutting us back and burning away our dead ends. That's part of that productive time while we wait. Maybe it's not the most comfortable feeling, being cut back and having our ends burnt. Sometimes even the branches that bring produce still need cut back. It's not always the fruit that is the problem. It's the fruit that we are producing, or that we are to be producing. Both branches that bear no fruit and branches that do bear fruit must be cut, which is a painful process. Anybody feel like they've experienced that at all in their life before? You're praying for the Lord to do some big miraculous thing, and he's pruning you, and you're like, man, why are you doing that? Why does that hurt? Why is that uncomfortable? It's part of that waiting period. It's part of that process. It might take a while. It's easy for us to accept that God would cut off the purposeless or those unproductive things in our life. We might even ask him to do that. It makes sense. But it's difficult for us to accept why God would cut the parts of our lives that are actually bearing fruit. Why would you cut that? Why would you prune that back? That's going so well. Like I said, you're snipped if you do and you're snipped if you don't. It's the sound of pruning. It's the soundtrack of a life that is growing and not growing. When we find ourselves experiencing John 15:2, it's because God is saying to us it's time for a cutback. Cut off appears to be the person who is unfaithful, but what about those who are faithful, who experience the cut of God's shears? I think maybe we're in that moment right now. We're faithful. We're hoping for the right things. We're striving for the right things. We're working towards the right things. And God's like, wait, fruit's coming. I've been here, I don't know how long I've been coming here, but I feel like it's getting exciting. Not that it ever wasn't exciting, but I feel like it's getting exciting. Don't lose that excitement in the waiting. If it takes longer than you want it to, or you think it should. Because the crazy reality is that times the good things are cut back so that they can become more productive. Even if it's exciting, if you feel like, man, I feel like God's pruning me, God's cutting me back, God's doing something that hurts right now, it's so that you can be more productive. That's a good thing. At times, as counter to it as we may think, God will take the shares to the things that matter more, the areas that we are most productive in. He will cut us back so that we can become even greater producing in those areas. Like I said, it makes sense when we think he's going to cut these areas off that aren't producing. That makes sense to us. But in an area that we feel like we're bringing glory to him in, we start feeling the shears. You get frustrated pretty easy. But when God gives us a cutback, he can remove something that we saw as good so he can replace it with something greater. In a life so bogged down and full, we must learn to differentiate what matters and what doesn't matter, and then commit ourselves to the things in life that are truly worth our while. I keep pointing back here, but sitting at his feet, enjoying his presence, extravagant worship, intercessory prayer, finding the right rhythms, being consistent in these things. I don't know if the idea of certain things in life taking a cut makes you nervous or anxious. If it does, I'm not going to lie, there are some areas in my life that I'm like, God, I want you to stay out of. I don't want you to cut that, deal with me, prune that. I mean, I do want that. But when it's happening, it's like, well, no, I don't want that. That's painful. I don't want to address that. Even good things, bad things, whatever. But we can't be anxious about those things because God is holding the scissors. And if we trust him, he's going to cut what needs cut so that we can produce what he wants us to produce. One of the hardest things in our lives is determining what we need to cut back so that other things can grow. We know that we can't be consistent in every area of our lives. We can try. I have lists for my lists. I have a schedule that is ridiculous, and I still like to sleep in. I still like to procrastinate. Doesn't matter how consistent I try, there are times that I'm going to mess up in my human nature, right? We can't be consistent in every area of our lives, but we can be consistent in the areas that really matter the most. It's not worth your while to stand in dead places, reliving offenses, resenting opportunities that you didn't have, mad about how you were raised or how you weren't raised. It's just not worth your while to stand in dead places. Those are some more generic things, but wherever it is that is a dead place for you, it's not worth your while. God needs to cut that out so you can produce. It's hard enough to understand the difference between right and wrong, so understanding what is really worthwhile may be even difficult for us too. Yet if we understand that we don't have to waste our limited energy on things that are not worth our while, we can make steps towards multiplying our fruitfulness. That's a big statement. Do I have to break that? Did that make sense? Because if we understand that we don't have to waste our limited energy on things that are not worth our while, then we can begin to make steps towards multiplying our fruitfulness. Nehemiah. I love Nehemiah. He's a leader that I would desire to be like one day, right? In Nehemiah 6, I believe Nehemiah embodied this process in his attempt to rebuild the walls. He only had a limited amount of time to complete the wall. Nehemiah divided the responsibilities up against people building the walls and people standing guard against the people who would come against the building up of the walls, right? Anytime someone attempted to divert Nehemiah's attention, in Nehemiah 6:3 specifically, he asked them why he should waste his time coming down from the wall while the work was going on. Nehemiah 6, this is where I'm going to read right here. When word came to Sanballat, Tobiah, Geshem the Arab, and the rest of our enemies that I had rebuilt the wall and not a gap was left in it, though up to that time I had not set the doors and the gates, Sanballat and Geshem sent me this message. "Come, let us meet together in one of the villages on the plain of Ono." But they were scheming to harm me. So I sent messengers to work with this reply: "I am carrying on a great project and cannot go down. Why should the work stop while I leave it and go down to you?" 4 times they sent me the same message, and each time I gave them the same answer. The limited time that we have to dedicate to our families, our spouses, our relationships, our jobs, our churches, it's wise to assess a distraction and ask ourselves, is this really worth my time? With this perspective, time becomes a multiplier when we don't waste it in places that's not worth our time. We gain more time to focus on what matters when we have the capacity to determine what doesn't matter. You can call it priority, you can call whatever word you want to put there, but it's not good for us to stand in dead places. The good news is God's going to make it worth your while when you're consistently remaining in Him in the right areas, right? Because you know you can't do it all, and you commit only to what counts. It may bear fruit, but what fruit is it most important for you to be concerned with at the moment? Where are you right now? What fruit is it most important that you bear right now? You know I'm only 35 years old, and I spent a long time praying and hoping and putting a lot of energy into things that wasn't fruit I was supposed to be concerned about. It's important to realize what fruit the Lord is calling you to produce. And it may take some time before you see the fruit, but it's worth it. Time can either be a friend or a foe. It's all contingent on what you're sowing into. Time is a multiplier when you sow correctly. So it's important that we look at what we're multiplying. In John 20, verse 1, Mary Magdalene ventured to Jesus' tomb while it was still dark, only to find out that the stone had been rolled away, revealing that Jesus was resurrected from the dead. When Mary set out for the tomb, she didn't know that Jesus was alive. She had chosen to go anyway. Even while her hope was still dark, she chose to go anyway. She didn't know what was going to happen when she got there. She just made the right priority in her life to go, right? The times in your life where you feel most unfruitful may actually be God's incredible process. It's that word process from month 1. I don't remember what one of them. Process. That sanctification process. It doesn't happen in a microwave or a drive-through. It's a process. It takes time. Real faith is what you do while it's still dark. After all, Romans 5:8 tells us that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. While we were at our darkest, lowest places in life, God loved us. Therefore, even while we feel unfruitful, might feel dark and low where we're at, we have a hope that tells us if we remain in a faithful connection to God, eventually we will see the fruit that God is developing in and for us. It takes more than 20 years to create the pattern. Like bad habits. We're going to talk about that more next time, I think. But we have these habits, these traditions, and it takes years that we get where we're at. It's going to take 2 weeks to undo it. Right? No, it's not. 3? Well, yeah, that's like a habit thing or something. But like I've had 35 years of not taking care of myself. I'm not going to, be awesome in a month at the gym. It's just the way it works. It takes time. Years of living has planted things into your soil, and it's going to take some time to change your life, to change the fruit it's producing. And like I said before, it's hard to commit to consistency when you have no frame of reference for the duration of your time. Destiny doesn't have a deadline. I had to laugh because of last time. I won't blame you. Last time it was Destiny's fault. But destiny doesn't have a deadline. When God is on your side, time is on your side too. Even if you feel like you've been struggling for years, even if you feel like you're tired of the same thing you've been persevering towards, when God is on your side, time is too. Since God is beyond time, he fully abides in the past, the present, and the future. In the same way that we view our surroundings at this precise moment, God just as clearly sees every day in everyone's life throughout all of history. That's important. I said that 2 or 3 times tonight. We look at it as a snippet. We look at it as a little point of view from ourselves. I can look and be like, man, I'm frustrated about this. Or I can look at it and say, man, I'm better than I was, a year ago. I had COVID too pretty bad. I wasn't supposed to come home. They told me I'd probably be on oxygen for 2 years. Within, 6 months or so, I was off the oxygen. I still have scar tissue. I'm on that treadmill, struggling. And I'm like, I've been good for so long. No, it's going to take time. Still not an excuse to stop, though. The Lord's slowing me down for some reason. I don't know why. I'm just supposed to enjoy his presence in the meantime. I feel like the Lord is saying to us, and I rarely say that because it gets scary, but I feel like the Lord's saying, but I feel like the Lord is saying that we're in a place that while he's cutting us, as he's snipping us, as he's pruning us, he's cultivating us. And if you can stick with it as a stub on a tree that's getting pruned, watch out because it's going to be worth every moment when the fruit is produced. It's springtime and it looks nice and we're excited about certain things. Storms will come. It might take a while. We got to stay planted. God is going to make this worth your while, and you'll bear fruit like never before when you remain. Worship while you wait. I just love how we don't talk, and all the Sunday morning messages always tie in. It's that little thread that only God can do what only God can do. We would rather enjoy the suddenly moments like an Acts, like at Pentecost. It just suddenly happens. But remember though, as Jesus left, he said, wait. There was always a wait before a suddenly. If you're frustrated about something that you think should be producing fruit, wait. And then it's going to suddenly happen in God's timing. There's always a suddenly before, or a wait before a suddenly. Jesus said, I am the vine, not the vending machine. We treat him like a vending machine. I'm going to pray D4 or B1. And then it gets stuck in the machine and we get frustrated, we start shaking it, and God's got to deal with us. So I got a few questions to leave you with, and then I'm done. What are some things in your life right now that you need to either cut off or cut back with the Lord's help? Our energy and resources are limited, so it's important that we dedicate our time and resources to the right things while we still have time to do so. Ask yourself this question: what are your top priorities? If a stranger was asked to look at your life and list your top priorities based only on your actions, this is where it gets real right here, would they make the same list? If a stranger looked at you, like your coworkers, or those in the same church, the people that know you, and they looked at only your actions and said, this is what I think so-and-so's priorities are, and you made a list of what you think your priorities are they going to match? Because if not, what commitments are taking up your priorities that aren't worth your while? What are some realistic ways that you can begin to shift those actions to align with your priorities? And then the last two questions is, have you ever considered someone to be an overnight success? Who? Think of that person. How might their sudden success actually have been something that happened over time after a while? When we look at athletes, they just spring up out of nowhere. Oh, he's awesome at this sport. I'm not going to give you details. I'm not a sports guy, and I'll mess it all up. But out of nowhere, we very rarely look back at all the work they did in middle school or high school, or they just came out first year, rookie, awesome. And lastly, what are some slow processes you're involved in right now that you believe will be worth your while? It's important to make sure that your priorities line up with Scripture and that your priorities and your actions lined up together. Can't be distracted by things that would distract us. So basically, I'm done, but I just want to say this may take a while. As exciting as it was this morning and last week, it might take a while. So don't lose heart. Which one? The very first one? If a stranger was asked to look at your life and list your top priorities, would they make the same list that you would?